Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another Conversations with Amoda Maa podcast. It's been a while since we've done a podcast, but here we are again. What we're going to do today is explore the nature of community in spirituality. And part of the reason we're offering this conversation is in light of our new offering from the Amoda Maa teachings, which is a community membership, which has been really quite a long time in gestation. And just in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks or so, we've actually launched it. And the response has been really quite interesting and quite favorable. And quite a lot of people have jumped on, and it was encouraging in a sense because it made us realize the value of community in spirituality. And so we're very encouraged to kind of talk about it. And it's in light of that, really, to actually talk broadly and somewhat specifically at some point about what we're offering, but also to talk about the value and, and what community means in a way in the spiritual world. So having said that, I'll say hello to Amoda. Greetings, Amoda.
Hello, Kavi.
And I mean, if you're ready, I think we're just going to launch into some questions that I've got that are going to hopefully open up this conversation a little bit. So let me ask you, first of all, what moved you? What's the motive? What's the inspiration? What's the fire that moved you and us? And we've been talking about this for really quite a long time, and a couple of years, I think it's been in the gestation, in the hatching, and now it's appeared. What moved you to offer us to offer this online community membership? And in many ways, why now?
I think it formed as a possibility, and perhaps I would say more than a possibility, a necessity, from the, was it 3-4 month, I think they were originally 4-month online programs that we offered that started during the time of the pandemic, and we all went online, and we felt that offering something on a weekly basis was supportive to those who were seeking peace and freedom and truth in a turbulent world. And so we had the 4-month program, and we offered that 2 or 3, I think it was 3 years in a row, perhaps even 4 years consecutively. And what we found from that was there was such a yearning to continue in that field, if you like. A sort of community formed itself. And we didn't have anything to follow up with other than our usual teaching schedule. And every year it was like, well, this wants to continue. So rather than running a year-long program, which was also possible, this seed of an idea came: how can we keep on supporting individuals on this journey? And that's how the sort of community, the idea of a community membership, formed itself. It has taken a couple of years to really come together. And now is the right time. It just feels the right time. It feels that we're ready on all sorts of levels. It's quite an undertaking, and it's a commitment for everybody. And it just feels absolutely the right time. I should also say that the right time has also revealed itself, not just from the online work that we do, but from the in-person work that we do. It became glaringly obvious at our recent in-person 7-day retreat that community is what people wanted. In other words, to keep on, or at least having the possibility to meet each other, not just at the retreat, but ongoing. Bonds were made, friendships were made, and trust, honest expression, authentic expression in a way that may not be available in other areas of life. And so the community meeting twice a month, and there's more to it than that, which we'll talk about, really spoke to everyone. So there was a deep thirst for it. So it feels absolutely the right time.
Yeah, I hear you, I agree. And actually, I think actually in many ways, right now is the right time. I'd like to ask you actually, and to talk a little bit about, what the structure is. Let's just cut to the, what is actually on offer. I know I'm going to ask you how it differs from the online programs that we offer. But what is it specifically that we're doing, that we're offering in this membership? You said about two meetings per month, I think you said. So let's just talk a little bit about those and why those are of value. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes. 2 meetings a month. Um, the first meeting is essentially a teaching meeting, if you like, where I offer a discourse on a specific topic, a simple silent meditation, and then, as usual, on our programs and teachings, ample time for questions, answers, inquiry, and so on. And in some ways, that is similar to our public meetings online, but those don't take place very frequently. They take place 3 or 4 times a year, and are open to everyone who wishes to join. But in the membership, so this is ongoing, so it's monthly. So for a start, that gives a teaching on a monthly regular basis, and the topics that are offered are not preset. So we don't have a series of themes. It's not linear, that we're taking people through stages. It really is spontaneous and mostly arises out of the listening that takes place when we have the question answer sessions, the inquiry sessions, and really feeling what themes are emerging that ask for exploration, deeper exploration. So that's the first monthly meeting that takes place. Remembering on some level that many of the members, at least so far, are individuals who've already worked with us, although that's not necessarily the case, but everyone's familiar to some degree with our teaching. So there is a bit of a foundation there, so we can actually explore topics perhaps on a deeper level or a broader level and so on. So that's the first meeting. And then the second meeting, which is the complement, is the meeting that you lead, Kavi, which we call an integration meeting, because it's both of us that are really offering this. People have come to know both of us and how that works. And we call that the integration meeting. Perhaps you can say more about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very gladly indeed, because actually when I realized, what the benefit of the second meeting was, as a complement to the first meeting, I actually got quite excited about the possibility of this, because we realized that the integration and embodiment, is the ongoing path. The teaching comes really from Amoda, through Amoda. She's the light, if you like, the fire that kind of brings the message, the clarity of the teaching. And then in the second meeting, the integration and the embodiment meeting, we get the chance really And I facilitate the community to really, in some ways, unpack some of that. You know, where does the teaching live inside the human experience? You know, where does it show up? Where are the problems? Where are the issues? And to as greater extent as time allows, each of these sessions is 2 hours. So we start with a deep meditation for 30 minutes to actually allow all of this to kind of enter the field, enter the body, enter the whole experience. And then we kind of dialogue, and I hear from people, and we talk about, you know, what the issues are. Well, it shows up in relationship, or I'm having this kind of issue. And it's not psychology, but it is the opportunity for me to facilitate that deeper kind of integration. And that we've done one so far, so we're, you know, we're new at it. It's fresh in a sense, but I think we're, you know, this brings out, I like it because it brings out my strength, which is to meet people down on the kind of ground level where it really kind of, you know, where the rubber hits the road. That's the, for want of a better expression. And the first one was really beautiful, a beautiful meeting. And I think it will provide this ongoing opportunity to see, you know, to really feel viscerally as a felt sense, where does the wisdom of what we're taking in meet us in real life, in daily life. So that's the most of the meeting. But I'll also just mention, you know, the idea that we've got, which is not an idea anymore, that at the end of the second integration meeting, we're going to offer some breakout groups, community breakout groups, where groups of 4, maybe 5, probably 4 people can meet each other. That's it, really. That's where it goes. I won't be there, Amoda won't be there, and it's the opportunity for people to kind of facilitate what can be called friendship. Yeah, what can be called friendship. And so, you know, there's no agenda, there's no nothing. It's kind of free form. So for 30, 40 minutes, we're going to open that up, and people can speak with each other about what's going on in their lives. And actually, you know, from the experience that we've had, particularly from the live retreat, that actually people were doing that and have been doing that anyway. Yeah, they're doing that. So part of the community offering is to kind of bring that to consciousness, to facilitate it in awareness, and to allow it to happen. And that's the kind of nuts and bolts, if you like, of the second session.
Yes. Well, I think you've said it all there, in the sense that that's why this community platform, this community membership, supports those who have been touched by our teachings. And at the retreats, there are a lot of insights, a lot of openings, profound openings, and then, yes, of course, you know, you go back home and stuff happens, or relationship or work or whatever. So the need for that integration, the need to have somewhere where one can share one's experience of what it's like in the everyday life, to explore, not just with us, but with each other, was so much wanted. Yeah, that's what I meant by the thirst for it really revealed itself. And so where does one go? Does one wait for the next retreat? No, here it is. And this was very valuable. And certainly the friendship pods kind of emerged themselves. We didn't really know how that was going to be, but people were yearning to connect with each other in a way that was safe, that was sacred, that was honest. So it's providing a new, if you like, paradigm or frequency field for meeting each other. So this is really what's happening, and I'm sure it'll grow and evolve as time goes on.
It was just to kind of wind that bit up. It was at the beginning of the in the meditation of the integration meeting that we had, that I realized that, you know, there's a hunger and a thirst and a need for momentum and continuity. Yeah, because it's certainly in my experience, momentum on the spiritual path is invaluable, because as you spoke to, you know, what happens is the awareness, the connection, the insight, the freedom, the taste and everything that happens either in an online meeting, you know, or, you know, most definitely in the live experiences. And then it's the very nature of the conditioned self, if you like, to go back into the life that is causing a lot of the problems in the first place, you know, and with all the grace and with all of the insight, it doesn't necessarily happen, but life has a habit of coming up and, you know, and seemingly derailing people, or compromising it, or, you know, that, oh, it's happened again and I'm back. And so there's a need for a kind of momentum to keep the breakthrough alive, just to keep it alive, to keep the inquiry, to keep the longing alive. And that's the continuity. Continuity and momentum go together to me with integration and embodiment. You know, I speak about the gradual path a lot, you know, and this is the facilitation of that gradual path. You know, that's why I like it. That's why I've
Yes,
got it.
that's it. That's it. And that's why it's called the field of love,
Yes.
because with that continuity, with that momentum, um, there is a frequency change that takes place. Yeah, we can have that frequency shift during a retreat very powerfully, very potently. And when I say frequency shift, I mean simply the shift from the ego identity, the separate self, to the knowing of unbounded consciousness, unbounded awareness as true nature. And that can happen very powerfully, and it can be seen and recognized, and it may last a while. And then, as you say, you know, you go back into life, and very often the habitual ways, the old programming, the victim identity, or the whatever it might be that's a part of the me identity comes up again. And then there's a sense there's something missing, and how can I get back to that state? So the frequency shift needs, and that's why I said it's a necessity, it needs to be supported, it needs to be maintained. And the world, as we experience it on a conventional level, does not support that necessarily, or certainly doesn't in most cases. So where do we go for that? So here it is. This is a frequency field where we meet each other, not from the divided state, not from the, if you like, unexamined, unconscious state, but from that deep knowing of the oneness of being. And yet within that, there is an honest exploration of what the challenges are, what the, what emotions come up, what triggers come up, and all of that, which is part of the integration process. So it's a field of love. That doesn't mean that everyone has to agree on their ideologies and so on, but the deeper agreement, if you like, and it's not an agreement, it's a connectedness that is always here, is on the level of beingness. And that has honesty in it, openness, presence, listening, just being with. It's an unconditional space. Yeah, it's unconditional. And that's a very different frequency to what's been available to most of us in the family situation, or in any other aspect of the world. So it is very potent in that sense.
The kind of adding to what what you said as well. You know, the one thing that one can see is facilitating, you know, these meetings and speaking with many people is that actually the, you know, the spiritual journey can be really for many people quite a lonely journey. It can, or lonely, it can actually isolate one quite a lot. Yeah, you suddenly find that you're asking deeper questions, you're unpacking, unveiling, you know, the social matrix within oneself, and you start becoming somewhat alienated from friends, from family, from, you know, the whole of the matrix can start to appear, you know, like what, you know, a bit of a problem. And we have experienced this, people saying, you know, I'm lonely, I'm on this path and I don't know what to do because I actually can't speak to anybody very much about it. This is an issue on the path. And whilst we can't meet in physical presence all of the time because we're located in different parts of this big world, you know, this actually does offer, you know, I mean, Sangha in general, online Sangha in general does, not specific necessarily to us. And I do want to talk about what role it plays, what role Sangha plays in this. But this is speaking very much to what a relief it is. And we've seen that already, what a relief it is to at least, you know, dissolve that a little bit of this I'm on my own, because we are alone, but we're alone together. That's a point, you know, worth making. And because we kind of named it the field of love, you know, we've declared it quite, you know, honestly and openly. You know, we're holding this frequency and we're holding this frequency and the love vibration. That means we're not going to play any fancy tricks. There's nothing real. It's very authentic. It's very real. So if we can meet each other in that reality, you know, then it supports the journey. That,
Yes, absolutely. Um, I think Sangha and community, whether it's in the ashram or whatever form it takes, has been a very much a part of the traditional spiritual path, whether it's Buddhism or anything else, really, any other not modality, but philosophy, ideology, and so on. There has been a lot of abuse of that over the years, abuse of power, you know, control, holding on to people through control, um, um, so that people don't feel free to leave and feel like they
oh, yes.
all that kind of stuff. And so this isn't, we have to be careful, not we, but um, we, you know, the idea of community must not be abused. It's not about forming some kind of clique, or that's what I mean by not. We don't all have to agree, because that's a kind of ideological straitjacket, that we all believe the same principles and we all have to behave a certain way, and I live my life in this certain way, and I can't go anywhere else, or follow anything else, or discover for myself. This is certainly not what's going on here. But having a place, a safe and open place, for that support when it's needed, for that exploration, for that possibility of friendship on a deeper level, is part of the spiritual path, because the world is built on the matrix. as you said, the social matrix, the family matrix, the educational matrix, the cultural matrix, the religious matrix, which is based on codependency and power and so on, and separation. And so there has to be a place that we can go to that is not that. And within that, there's no control. There's the request for kindness and courteousness, and things like that. But otherwise, and it's not about how to live your life, what you should do and what you shouldn't do, but it is about a deep exploration of how truth is lived in each of us, how it wants to move, and so on. So there is a value in that. On a personal level, I was never part of any spiritual group or community, and yet I was deeply touched and would say I still am, by the very broad community of Osho. I did spend time in India at the ashram. I don't think it was called an ashram, but and found a level of authenticity and deep self-exploration that wasn't available to me anywhere else. And even though it's not a place where you can live forever, it's a place that you immerse yourself in for a while. And then living alone in in the cities, that frequency, if you like, remained with me. And I still feel very connected to it without being involved in any way. So I think that template, if you like, was very valuable to know that, and to feel and to meet others who are on a similar path and yet totally unique. Yeah, totally unique. Allowed a great ground that wasn't available in the let's say conventional world.
Let me ask you a little bit more about that. Not really about that, but about you. Because essentially, what we're doing is, this is called the Amoda Maa Foundation, the Amoda Maa teachings. And so, if there's any head honcho, number one, if you like, it's you. It's kind of comes through you. I've known you for a very long time now, and you're not a community oriented human being. You're a singular, lone, Mustang. You're a singular. You don't, do you know what I'm kind of digging
Yes.
at here? It's like, isn't there a bit of a juxtaposition here within a Amoda Maa? I mean, me for myself, and I know I'm part of the bridge here between you and people, and we've talked about that, and I'm always prepared to talk about that because I'm also alone, but I'm a more of a social, integrator. I can speak to humans. So, but you, as the number one in this, are not a social creature. Now, talk to me about this.
Well, yes, there's an anomaly here in some ways. I mean, I live in the paradox of everything, the great paradox of existence.
I will talk to more, maybe our next podcast will be about
Yeah.
you and the paradox of your existence.
And I am able to, I embrace the paradox where,
Yes, it's a
because
good
that's my
conversation. Yeah.
experience of awakening, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, is the paradox. Although I say I've been immersed in some in a field, I call it the field. It was a field of unconditional love that I experienced through my time in India with, and the people around Osho and so on. I am not on a personal human level interested in community in that way. I don't particularly want to be part of anything. I don't need to. I am singular. And I have uh, contemplated and energetically experienced, viscerally experienced uh, aloneness. Yeah, the aloneness of consciousness, which is also the same as the all oneness. So I have no need for that. I have no need to be in some group or other. And yet I find myself being part of a group. The fact that I'm, if you like, teaching it, leading it, or being the the one that is offering something through this teaching, through this vehicle. It doesn't really matter what role we play. I'm still in the group as such. When we sit in retreat for 7 days, well, there's a group. Yeah, there's a community. When we offer things online, there's a community. It's not a social interaction, and I don't need to form friendships.
Yeah,
All of this, yeah. So I can only be uh, given, if you like, to the role that has revealed itself for me, which is not of my own, creation. I haven't, planned this. I haven't had a goal for this. It's what's revealed itself. And each of us has a unique
that's right.
expression and a unique role. We may call it, oh, well, she's the teacher, or he's the leader, or he's the guide, and so on. And not everybody can be that, nor should they. Everyone has their rightful place. And that's just the way of things. Yeah, all beings have a community, whether we look at the plants in the garden, the trees, uh, any aspect of nature or any animal species. It has, I wouldn't call it, well, it's a kind of hierarchy, but it doesn't have to be a hierarchy that is to do with control or power or any abuse of boundaries or any of that. It's just right. It's the right pattern. It's the right fractal. This is how nature works. It's fractalian. And fractal always begins a pattern and then it gets repeated and becomes a community, if you like. On a human level, we call it a community. But it's a fractal pattern. So, yes, it's somewhat on an anomaly, but on this, if we look at it from this perspective, it's not at all. I mean, I could live in my ivory castle, or I could have done, I can't anymore. But I could have lived in my ivory castle and did live in my ivory castle for many, many years without friendships, without partnerships, occasionally relationships. Just in my head, I could write ad infinitum about the nature of consciousness or something or other, and I'd be perfectly happy. But that's not enough. There was something else. And so this has emerged in this way. So, yes, I'm absolutely singular and totally comfortable, happy at one with aloneness. And yet it's all one. And that's how it's experienced. Yeah.
Beautiful. I think that what you say sparks so many kind of questions and inquiries or revelations, and I think, knowing you, I think you could, there was always a little part of you that would long to be the writer who is just shut away somewhere living your own life, and partly me coming along and this work and this coming to America, has enabled, forced, coerced, courted, or whatever it is, the fire, as an Aquarian, as the fire of your open, whatever, wisdom, to court you to actually, bring that fire. Let's name it as that. It's like a Promethean myth, to bring that fire of love and openness and awareness, into the human experience. That's not to overgrandize it, but it is to name it as such. And so so that's one thing. And I see that and I am fundamental in that, in a way, because I do provide the bridge between you and people in a good way. But also, there is such a trust in the community, as such as it is, around you, around me, around us, if you like. And it is extremely refreshing, because there is a depth of trust, not trust in anything, but there's a level of trust that we humans can get to, where we can not actually trust anything, but just trust the field itself. And maybe that comes through you, and maybe it comes through me. Maybe it comes to the fact that, I don't know, you're a woman, I'm a man. We're not going to play any funny games, and people fall into that. And within that, every single person is allowed to find their own place. That's what I'm getting to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does affect you as well. Yeah, because you're able to find your own place in it. And it's okay being the teacher. There's not a problem with that. There's nothing attributed to it. And I, as the bridge, I'm okay with being, having one foot in your realm and the other foot in the human realm, and to dance in my own way in that kind of paradox, because neither of us are interested in having friendships. And that's a really good thing. We're actually self-contained within what we've got. We're kind of quite happy. But there is such a longing and a desire to be of great service in a
That's
way.
exactly what I was going to say. I feel I'm in service to this. I'm in service to life. So whatever moves as a genuine impulse, even though, and it doesn't anymore, but it used to, the personality self says, no, I can't do that, or I don't want to do that. And that's not there anymore. But it's just given to that. And that was a very strong knowing, even though it hadn't formed itself yet, after awakening. Very shortly after awakening, when certain insights came, and I don't mean about my life, but just about the nature of existence and the nature of consciousness as it becomes form, or as it moves through form. And I wasn't teaching then, it was all very quiet, and it was just integrating itself. But one of the primary insights that stayed with me and was there at the beginning was that which has woken up to itself, which actually isn't about the individual, about the personhood, but that which has woken up to itself, consciousness, awareness has woken up to itself, recognize its own nature through the individual, because it can't do it without a nervous system, a physiological system for recognition to take place. Then, from that recognition, it then has to, it doesn't have to, but it does, almost sacrifice its true home in order to come back into the human vehicle and be of service in some way. And the service part didn't reveal itself for quite some time, but it sort of recognized that it was a kind of sacrifice, but a sacrifice taken consciously, because it can't stay there. Well, it is there. It hasn't changed. But if we just, on a human level, because yeah, the human is still here. If one tries to maintain that as a static state, that becomes a spiritual ego and it becomes disembodied. And on the other hand, if there's no body for it to filter into, well, that's death. And obviously, I hadn't died on that level. The physiological system was still here. So whilst this physiological organism was still alive, then awake consciousness, awakeness or awareness recognizing itself has to then be filtered through the human vehicle. Because even though the ego identity has come undone, there's still a human vehicle for it to filter into. And then what? And then what? Well, then an intelligence keeps on informing that movement, but an intelligence that isn't of the separate me identity, but of that mysterious, the mystery of intelligence, the mystery of divine intelligence, which is in the field as awake consciousness filters in and through. Well, then that's what's been emerging. That's the service. That's the giving of myself to whatever wants to move here. And so here we've ended up at offering a community membership, which would have been a million miles away of anything I could have imagined, let's say 20 years ago. So that's all we can do. And there's a great freedom and a great joy and the joy of it's of creation. There's a creation that keeps taking place here. And that's where we are. What form it takes, what we call it, whether we call it community or friendship or support or service, these are all labels. But
so this is when you speak of that, the phrase bodhisattva of love came to me, because it's the bodhisattva is exactly part of, in many ways, without any of the tradition and stuff, is exactly what you're kind of talking to.
That's right.
The bodhisattva sacrifices their eternal, union to say, oh God, I've got to go back and I'm going into the human realm, and it's going to be tough. But it is inevitable that I've got to do it. And the only thing that I added was the love factor, because I think this is, it's the same, of course, awareness of the way that you're talking of it, and love, the way that we talk of it, are the same thing. So this is you returning as a bodhisattva of love.
That's exactly it. And that was such a profound knowing. And then, of course, the mind doesn't get hold of that and say, well, I'm going to do good things and I'm going to be a spiritual teacher and I've got to serve mankind. It doesn't come from that. It's a very organic, authentic, natural, honest allowing of the movement. Because until this body comes undone, there can be no, if there is such a thing, which I think there is, but I won't know until I totally experience it, the final rest. Yeah. And so this is it. And this is the great paradox.
Yeah, I think this is also, in a different way, but actually is the experience for me as well, because I've had to leave whatever residue of discomfort, whatever residue of self has followed me around, even as far as Santa Fe, where I thought I could escape it, where I was unable to escape the residue of my own self. It didn't disappear in one fell swoop in the way that happened to you. And then I realized that my calling was to serve love in the way that I do, in the ragged way that I talk about it, and to serve this, ultimately to serve this teaching, because I believe it's so pure, and it just feels so clean. Oh, the yearning of the human being to have a clean experience, not morally, but just honestly and truthfully. And then I realized I might be waiting until discomfort or something left in order to, to step in and serve love. And then I realized the calling is to actually be here, whatever, to serve it in the way that I can, just in the way that I do. And there's such a great freedom in that because I'm not trying to get rid of anything, just trying to be here in the human realm in as honest, open, clear, untangled way as possible. And that's actually what I particularly like about it, because the learning that we've gone through in society is such a mess of entanglement of the self, that's got all wrapped up with each other and with ourselves. And if there's any opportunity to let loose that, to let loose some of the the tanglements that we put around each other, the tentacles, as I call them, that we can offer that kind of a clean and kind of healthy environment in
Mhm.
which we can meet each other. That's Sangha.
That's right. It is. And it's born of our relationship, which we don't have to go into right
No,
now, but it is born of our relationship because that's a Sangha too. It's clean, it's pure, it's unentangled, as you say, and all the qualities of that are experienced in our teaching groups, whatever we offer, our community is also right here within the self and its relationship to itself and within us. And so it's a natural flowering of that we are both in service to. Yes.
very beautiful. That's a I've enjoyed this conversation very much. We haven't got through all of the individual questions, but I actually don't think we need to. I think we've touched on everything that we need to. We don't, you know, I mean, this is a beautiful conversation and it's a beautiful exploration, and that's it. Were you all going to say something?
No, I was going to say much the same and just say maybe we should just finish off by just saying again what the community is about or what it's
Go ahead.
involved on a, yeah,
Yeah,
on a,
go
on
ahead.
a practical level. Yeah.
Can you do that?
Yeah. So we meet twice a month. The first meeting of the month is on a Sunday. The second meeting of a month is on a Friday. So they're about 2 weeks apart. Um, First meeting is the teaching meeting that I guide with a discourse, meditation, Q&A inquiry session. Each meeting is 2 hours. Kavi then offers the other meeting, the integration meeting, also 2 hours with
Friday.
a on a Friday, guided meditation, deep guided meditation, and then the opportunity for sharing and exploring what might have come up from the previous meeting. Friendship pods, which are evolving. We also have our team members, Andrea, who is part of our team, who will be supporting those friendship groups that will take place online. There's also the Facebook private.
And Giancarlo, hopefully, as well, who's going to.
Giancarlo's
I want
also
to
be
mention Giancarlo, so him as
supporting
well.
that. Yes, there is a private Facebook group just for community members where they can interact or share or connect. There's also a WhatsApp private members group, which apparently, because we're not
Yeah.
directly involved in it, is doing incredibly well. Everyone's super excited about it. People are connecting, and this is outside of the 2 monthly meetings. People are connecting. They're speaking on the WhatsApp. They're speaking on the phone. It's totally obligatory. Sorry, it's not obligatory. Sorry,
You
it's
must.
yeah, only if you wish to be part of that. But it seems to have a life of its own. There are some discounts available for members for joining our other online programs, because the other online programs are theme based mostly. And a few other things. The recordings are available and such like. So check it out. It's on the website under community. All the details are there.
It's very good. It is very good. It feels like a sort of an offering whose time has come. and in such a good way, in such an honest way, that an organic way, that I actually still very excited about it, and there's not much more to say about that. So if you're moved and you want to check it out, go to the website and yeah, explore a little bit further and see how you feel. Amoda?
I think that's it.
I think we covered it today. That was a
Yeah,
very
beautiful.
joyous conversation.
Yes.
However, I will, get you in a future podcast about living in the paradox and kind of dive into that a little bit more. I think that might be quite useful and interesting. Okay, we're going to finish up today. Thank you so much for listening, and may you be well, may you be blessed. We'll see you again for hopefully not too distant future for another conversation with Amoda Maa. Over and out. Namaste from us both.
Namaste.